Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Today, we're discussing a critical issue that affects families worldwide, and that is the attempt to redefine children's rights in ways that sideline parents and expose children to irreversible harms. I'm George Christensen. I'm the Australian Campaigns Director for Citizen Go. And if you don't know about Citizen Go, it is an international organisation, certainly not a globalist one. We're against those globalists. We're international in that we operate in over 25 different countries. And our whole mantra is about defending and protecting life, family, and freedom around the world. And to that end, we actually don't just take fights up with domestic governments, national governments, although we do that, but we take the fights right up to globalist bodies like the United Nations. And indeed, this whole thing is a fight against the United Nations. I'm going to get into that in a minute, but I want to introduce our very special guest today, Chris Elston. Many of you will know Chris by the moniker Billboard Chris. He's a father activist and the founder of We Speak Truth Foundation. Chris actually left a successful career to raise awareness about the medicalization of children and the dangers of puberty blockers and so-called gender-affirming care. That's a phrase that I hope to never use again. Mutilation is probably more the point in experimentation. For peacefully expressing that message, Chris has faced censorship, fines, and legal persecution in multiple countries. And I apologize profusely on behalf of Australia because ours is one of that you have faced that censorship in. And to my great shame, the state that I hail from, Queensland, was where you were, we say arrested, but it was more of a fine that Brisbane City Council tried to stitch you up with, Chris. And I think we've got a photo of that that we can put up on screen.
Yeah, it was sort of a half arrest. It was a technical arrest, and then they released me and fined me, and I appealed their fine, and I won. So it's all good.
And you've won multiple times over and over again in Australia and elsewhere. So and there is the photo there with quite common sense billboard on there. Children cannot consent to puberty blockers. I don't know any child that can. They certainly can't consent to a lot of other things. Why they would consent to a life-altering substance being injected into them is beyond me. But for that thought crime, there's a couple of our finest.
Yeah, there were 12 of them there, to be exact.
12
were off screen. Standard reaction.
Well, man, I just shake my head at the level of wokery that Australia has descended into, and that instance was an example of one of them, sadly. And I, again, apologise on behalf of Australia and my state of Queensland for what you incurred there. But Chris, what I really want to know is what motivated you to leave a successful career and just take up this issue and take to the streets? What was it?
Well, George, I think this is pretty common sense. They are stopping the development of perfectly healthy children who have been lied to and who have been deceived into believing that they were born in the wrong body. Something that no one can ever define what that even means. But this is essentially a battle of good versus evil. I have two daughters. They're now almost 14 years old and 16. But I've been at this for over 5 years, and this is primarily a social contagion affecting girls. And so I wanted to learn all about it to protect my own. Because this is essentially a cult that has taken over the Western world, and no one is immune to cult-like thinking. And we have to understand what's going on in the world to be able to protect our kids. But the more I learned about this, the crazier it got, the crazier it gets. This is one of the greatest deceptions in mankind's history and one of the worst things we've ever done to kids. So I literally just felt a calling to do something about it. I couldn't stay silent, and I knew I could make a difference. And I think when you know you can make a difference and you have a vision of what to do, to not do that is basically the definition of cowardice. And I'm not going to live a life like that. Or I'm going to try not to live a life like that. And I'm certainly not going to send my girls into a world that doesn't know what a woman is and a world that's trying to change the sex of children. So at first I put up actual billboards. A lot of this is about freedom of speech. And what happened in July of 2020 was a woman put up a sign at the Edinburgh train station that said, the very controversial, I love J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter author. It had a heart on it. And that sign lasted one day because some people on Twitter complained that it was hate speech. The government-run train authority took it down. I got tired of our speech coming under attack, people getting fired from their jobs for acknowledging reality, the best people being fired from their jobs, the most truthful people, the people who are most concerned about what's happening to our kids and to women. And we just can't live in a world like that. So I had enough, basically. I was a financial advisor for a long time, almost 20 years. I used to manage investments and insurance and all that sort of stuff. And I just had enough. So I put up a billboard that said the same thing. It also lasted a day. We're talking about a big billboard on the side of the street, 30 feet, 40, 50 feet wide. And a Vancouver politician said it was hate speech. It also said, "I heart J.K. Rowling, the world's greatest children's author." And so after that, I put up a whole bunch more throughout the United States, Los Angeles, Portland, all throughout Utah, San Francisco, all throughout the metro in Washington, D.C., at about 14 different stations. And then Times Square. So that was my September of 2020. But here in Canada, where I was stuck at the time because of COVID, I couldn't even leave the country. And no sign companies would work with me. And my whole goal has always been to simply start conversations. Because I know when we have enough conversations about this and people learn about it, we will stop it. And we will activate other people to get into this fight. And that's exactly what's been happening. And that's why we're winning. But where I was stuck in Canada, I couldn't even put up a sign. So I became one. I became a walking, talking billboard, and I started going outside, and that was way more powerful than all these expensive billboards I put up. And I started traveling Canada and then the US when the borders opened, and now the world. And when you're persistent and you just don't quit, good things happen. Good things happen when you go outside is what I always say, and you meet amazing people. And that's what I've done and what I'm doing and what I'm going to continue to do until we stop this child abuse.
Yeah. Well, look, you've answered my second question, which is I was going to ask why you took such a direct and visible approach, and that's because they censored you, and where one door closes, another one opens, so to speak. But it's just unbelievable the level of stifling of conversations, discussions, anything to do with this. And I'm in the UK right now, and the UK is like almost ground zero for the stifling of any conversation around this issue. It really has been,
for sure.
Apart from the Cass review, which was just a miracle that actually came to light here in the UK. But nonetheless, we've had police officers knock on doors of our very own Carolyn Farrow, who was going to be talking with you tonight, but she's sick. She got a knock on the door while she was cooking a chicken dinner, and it was the police wanting to talk to her about posts that she put on. Or no, she didn't put on X, but anyway, posts that they claimed that she had put on X that were critical of transgenderism. I mean, I sort of wonder what's become of a free society. Canada and Australia are, I think, pretty similar countries, being both Commonwealth countries with the same sort of parliamentary system. And I think that we have devolved in terms of free speech on issues like this and others, probably at the same rate. I've always thought Canada was a bit worse, but I'm not so sure about that now, Chris. I'm not so sure about it, given our e-safety commissioner here in Australia.
I have an opinion on this.
Anything, but I'd love to hear your opinion on it. Go ahead.
I don't think Canada is worse. I think Australia is worse, for sure. We don't have yet an e-safety commissioner. So for those watching, the e-safety commissioner is an unelected bureaucrat in Australia. Her name is Julie Inman Grant. She's actually American, but her job is to censor the internet, not just in Australia, but the entire world. If it impacts an Australian, she will censor the internet. So for example, I am a Canadian man, and early in 2024, I published on Twitter, or X, an American platform, a British article from the Daily Mail. So we got a Canadian publishing a Daily Mail article on X about Teddy Cook, an Australian woman who runs the TQ organizations down under. And she is a woman identifying as a man. She posts pictures of her naked body. She says the government should be paying for sex changes for kids. She posts about, I don't want to get too graphic here, but orgies and all sorts of terrible stuff. She posted a picture of a dog sodomizing a man. So naturally, this is who was appointed to the World Health
Yeah.
Organization, tasked with drafting healthcare policy for adults and children
Just insane.
identifying as transgender. She's not a doctor. She's not a medical professional. She is simply an activist caught up in this cult herself. And like all cults, the victims become the recruiters and the perpetrators. And that's what's going on with transgenderism.
Yeah.
But she should not be on a healthcare panel. She shouldn't be. She's
No, she shouldn't have been. And
as
it was legitimate
extreme as these
criticism.
people come. And so I criticized her appointment and I called her a woman because she is. And they deemed that to be cyber abuse. So they ordered X to take down my post, or X would face a $782,500 fine. X refused, but they sent me this legal takedown notice. And I was just going to bed. And I saw this thing and I thought, oh my gosh, this is great. This is probably the least intelligent thing they could have done, because a post I had already forgotten about from a month earlier now went mega viral. And now I had an opportunity to sue the Australian government, which I did. I filed an appeal. Elon Musk also filed an appeal. He had his lawyers. I had my lawyers. 2 separate cases. They were all heard at once. And I sat in a Melbourne courtroom last year for 5 days for my post. And the good news is we won spectacularly.
Yeah, you did. And I think you were with the Australian Human Rights Law Alliance there. My good friend John Steinoff and that organisation was working with you. And I got to tell you, you might not have seen it, but we were busy petitioning in the background to the e-safety commissioner and the Minister for Communications for what it was worth to say to him, drop this. But there was no political win. It was a legal win. And good on you and good on the legal team that was representing you to get that win, because I think it's very important for free speech in Australia and right around the world. You spoke about this activist that was appointed to the WHO's panel that was looking into transgender health or gender health. And it just seems that these globalist bodies, want to continue to drive this agenda right throughout the world. And this is one of the reasons we're talking tonight. Citizen Go is actually mobilizing, Chris, against the UN again for what they're doing and reviewing how children's rights are interpreted, how it's applied globally. Because in this process, in this review they're doing, concepts such as abortion, gender ideology, and puberty blockers are being reframed as rights. It's sort of bizarre. I just thought children had a right to try and be children without people wanting to come along and put things like puberty blockers in them. But the reframing of those rights, it actually bypasses and weakens parental consent and authority. In some cases, that's pretty explicit what they're trying to do. They're recommending that this influence national laws, court rulings, public policy. And I think that you've been at this game long enough to know how it works when diktats are sent down from the UN, even if a country hasn't adopted them, lock, stock, and barrel. They are given some sort of weight in certain circles, particularly legal circles, health circles, that sort of thing. And countries often just adopt these resolutions and recommendations and, all the sort of treaties and all that comes out of it just to avoid any sort of unpleasantries. And as I said, what often just starts as a simple guidance quickly becomes policy for certain institutions. So we're mobilizing against them. We've got a petition up. If people who are watching want to sign it, it's savechildrights.org. Say that again, it's savechildrights.org. We've got over 203,000 signatures to that petition to the UN at the moment, and hoping to get a hell of a lot more than that. So they sit up and take notice. But Chris, you called it a cult. I guess that organisations like the UN and the WHO would have to be the leaders of this cult, the high priests of the cult.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, with cults, you normally have a leader. But when you look at all the other hallmarks of cults, and I don't want to use language that's unnecessarily provocative, but honestly, when you look at all the hallmarks of cults, this one fits it. The people who push this don't allow themselves to look at the truth. If you come at them with the truth, they won't hear it. They have their own mechanisms in place to prevent themselves from acknowledging the truth, because to do so would to destroy their entire life view. It would destroy their entire social circle. So they lie, And when someone does leave the cult, as we see with actual cults, they're then vilified. So you get these young detransitioners, these young women, for example, who have been harmed. People like Chloe Cole, who had a double mastectomy at 15, or Clementine, a young woman I met at UCLA, who went on puberty blockers on her first appointment at the age of 12 at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. Testosterone at 13, double mastectomy at 14. The testosterone caused psychosis. She went off it at 17. Her doctor, Johanna Olsen Kennedy, one of the worst individuals in the United States doing this, and she's still doing it, she wanted her to get a hysterectomy as a 17-year-old.
That's shocking.
And Clementine said no, but she eventually detransitioned, but the harm is done, right? Detransition is really just a name and actually undo the transition, which is just body modification. And it doesn't matter what evidence you show these people, they will always reject it. And they prey on victims like all cults do, and those victims then become the recruiters. So this whole thing needs to be shut down, because the truth of the matter is, and not everyone is willing to admit this yet, because it can sound radical, but the absolute truth of the matter is there is no such thing as a transgender child. There's no such thing as being transgender. It is a term that nobody can define, including the people who identify as transgender. I know this because I've asked hundreds of them, including just a couple days ago when I was at Davos at the World Economic Forum, and this British man came to harass me at my table with another man identifying as a woman wearing demon horns, if you can believe it or not. That person himself couldn't identify what any of these terms mean. Gender identity, that is a term that was not even invented until 1964 by a man named Robert Stoller, a professor at UCLA. This is a relatively modern invention. And all gender identity is personality. And personalities don't require a sex change. So if your little boy is more effeminate, guess what? He's not trans, he's a boy. And if your girl likes to climb trees and play sports and hates wearing dresses, she's a girl. That's fine. Kids and adults are sometimes different than other kids and adults, and we don't need to pathologize it and medicalize them. That's totally insane.
There's a meme that goes around that just shows the stupidity of the whole argument, Chris, and the meme has, one person saying that, your body and your body parts don't determine your gender, and the person responding is saying, well, why do you want to cut those parts off then? It's just so true. This irreversible, life-changing so-called solution to what is, in most cases, as you and I know from the data that we've seen, a very temporary passing fad, actually, in the life of a lot of kids. And you're right about gender identity and transgenderism. They're modern inventions. The term really was gender dysphoria at one stage, that really was all about mental illness and mental state. But we're not talking about that for, adults, right? I mean, you and I probably have our views on that in adulthood, but hey, you're an adult. Knock yourself out.
I mean, 18-year-olds are adults, but we shouldn't be doing this to them either.
No, I would.
When you look at the data, these kids. Oh, I'm sorry. When you look at the data, these kids overwhelmingly have other things going on. We know from the Tavistock, the gender clinic in the UK, 70% of those children had 5 or more other mental health problems. Cutting, ADHD. We've got autism prevalent in a majority of these cases. Sexual abuse is prevalent in a majority of these cases. With Clementine, she had been sexually abused at 7. Wow. And BPD, borderline personality disorder, mothers with borderline personality disorder. It's all these other things. And so I don't care if you're 18, 19, or 20 years old. They shouldn't be doing it to them either.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to step outside of the conversation about children, but they should still be screening for trauma and abuse and all these other things, because medicine is about first doing no harm. They are not order takers where someone says, I'd like a double mastectomy, please. And they go, here you go.
100%. The issue, I guess, is that I've seen the data in Australia, the explosion of numbers just at a single hospital. It went from, I think, 8 or 9 that presented, say about 10 years ago for gender-related issues to over 800 in a single year. And you see that sort of data that's it's the same right across the Western world, right? I mean, something is going on. I agree with you. It's the cult. And but as a father of a young girl, right, this terrifies me because the cult has got all the instruments of mass communication behind it. We know that. Turn on Netflix and see the kind of rubbish that they show on there. And I don't want my daughter to sort of be held back from the modern world, but I also want to protect her. Chris, I've got to ask you, father to father, how has you being a father shaped your understanding of what's at stake for children? And personally, what are you doing to ensure that your children don't fall into this cult?
How much time you got? So this
As
is,
long as you want, mate.
I got a
As
lot
long
of
as you want.
stories here. So 5.5 years ago, right when I started this campaign I'm on, I caused quite a hullabaloo in my community. I had posted on my local community's Facebook group that I was going to go door to door, and I was going to drop off some of the lesson plans that were approved by our provincial government so that people watching could see. For example, in kindergarten with your 5-year-old, there's one of these approved education lesson plans where they'll get a little card saying, "Hi, my name's Sheila. Please call me they." And it's that 5-year-old's job to go around the class introducing herself as such. That's totally mental. So I was going to drop off some of these lesson plans door to door. No commentary from me, just here's the lesson plan that was produced by our government for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that caused quite a scene in that Facebook group. You know, this is one of those groups where people post that they're missing their cat or whatever, or they're selling their bike. It's just for the local community. And the organizers of the group shut the whole thing down for days because that caused such a scene. Right away, there were these human rights lawyers debating me. I don't know where they came from. I don't even think they live in the community. I think they just hang out in these groups to silence people. But I then went to the school on Monday morning, and the principal had heard about this and was waiting to speak with me. So I talked with this man for about 45 minutes in the parking lot. And I came to the correct assessment that he was a problem. And so I went home and I looked up every school board member. Now, I don't think you have school boards in Australia.
No,
for
we
each
don't.
region. You have trustees that are elected who kind of run things. Really, they don't have a lot of power here. They have way more power in the United States. But we have these people. And so I looked them all up for all the cities around Vancouver, about 450 of them. And then I looked up which ones had Twitter accounts. And I stayed up all night and I wrote this very long thread. And in each part of the thread, I tagged all these different school trustees. So when they all woke up in the morning, they all had about 500 different notifications. And this caused the head of Safe Schools for Surrey, British Columbia, and the head of the school district to reach out to me for a meeting. So we had this meeting. It was about an hour long. We both recorded it. And I made the head of Safe Schools cry 3 times during the meeting. And she didn't cry because I was scary or something. She cried because she was agreeing with me. Because they understand the harm that is being done to kids, but they have no power to stop it. It all comes top down. It's from the government. So they said, "Chris, you got to meet with the Minister of Education." Well, the Minister of Education won't meet with me. I tried. I got on a ferry over to Vancouver Island during the election campaign, and I tried to meet with him. I walked into their election campaign headquarters for the NDP, the New Democratic Party. It's this radical left. They're basically just a communist party, to be exactly honest with you. But I saw this woman at the counter. She said, "Hello." And I said, "Hi, I'm Chris, and I'm hoping to meet with the Minister of Education." He wasn't there. His campaign manager was. But instead, I talked to her for 10 minutes. And one by one, everyone in this large room where they were putting their political posters together or whatever, they all fell silent. And for about 10 minutes, I just had this entire room. And I told them all about what was happening to kids. And then I got to this true story where a man named Adam Labukin, who in British Columbia, I'm really sorry. If your kids are watching this, please mute this for a moment. But this man, raped a 3-month-old baby and drowned a 3-year-old. He then, in prison, identified as a woman, so the BC government paid for him to get breast implants, and they transferred him into the Fraser Valley Penitentiary for Women, which has a mother and infant unit, where the mothers live with their infants up until a certain age. They have like little houses. It's totally different than America. And they placed him right next door to that unit, too. And he's still in there. And when I told them this story about this rapist who was put into this women's prison, rapist of a baby, what did they do? They weren't shocked and horrified. They didn't say, oh my gosh, that's awful. They said I was making them feel unsafe and kicked me out. 3 times they said I was making them feel unsafe. They have to make this a safe space. I came back the next morning to see Rob Fleming, who was at the time the Minister of Education. And what was their response to all of this? They hung the transgender flag underneath his political poster. So they don't care about the truth. There is no limit to the amount of horrors they can hear that will snap them out of it, because again, this is like a cult. And they're just going to deny it or ignore it. So anyway, I made such a scene in the beginning, politely and professionally, that I basically got to pick my kids' primary school teachers up until they got into high school. So they never got the trans activist types. Not that my school had a lot of it. We're in a more conservative area of the city, and high school has been great. And so this is a really long answer to your original question, but you have to have these conversations with your kids at an age appropriate level, and you give them the positive message, which is you are beautiful. I love you, and you are great just as you are. And if anyone ever comes along with some message otherwise, I want to hear about it. And if you ever hear the word gender at school, I want to hear about it. And that first week of school, when your kids are in elementary school especially, you get a meeting with the teacher. Every school does this. So go have the meeting.
I've had that meeting.
Where do you stand on gender ideology? Because you're going to find out right away where they stand, and you're going to know right away if they have a problem. And now a lot of this depends on your kids. Some kids are more vulnerable. Some kids, have autism, for example, and they're going to be more vulnerable to this. My kids don't, and they've been always thriving, and they're doing great. They get straight A's. My oldest is very likely going to be valedictorian next year. And she actually started in public school in Canada. I know people aren't going to believe this, but she essentially started what is a Christian group in the school. It's not called that. She tried to start it one as explicitly a Christian group, but they wouldn't allow that. But she just started a discussion group. And it's the most popular group in the school. She's got almost 100 kids coming to it every week. So meanwhile, the LGBTQ group has next to nobody. So we're doing all this in public school. They're learning tons. They're in band. They're active. Everything's great. But we've been receptive, and we've been present as parents. And my number one thing for all the parents out there, all you dads out there, read to your kids at night. Read to them at night until they're teenagers, and then you're all busy. It's the best time of day, and they will tell you things that happened at school that you didn't know about because maybe they're just trying to delay bedtime. But you have this wonderful bonding moment. Go read the Harry Potter series to them. It'll take you a few years, and you're never going to forget it. It's the best.
Well, we love J.K. Rowling, so why not? I think you're right, particularly for girls. It's important for fathers to say that tell them that they are beautiful, and have those discussions with teachers. My daughter's in kindergarten, and I got to say, even when I let her go to kindergarten, I had that apprehension. Who am I placing my daughter in the care of? And I had to have those discussions. And my wife's sort of shifting from foot to foot, really uncomfortable, but I had them. And I was told, quite frankly, we don't talk about that rubbish here. And I went, great, you said the word rubbish. So
and honestly, for everyone watching, that's almost always going to be the response you get.
Yeah.
So you got to 23 years old with purple hair. That's going to be the response you get. So at least you make it clear. And then sometimes they don't know about it also, and you bringing it up to them causes them to start looking into it, and then they learn as well. Instead of learning from some union official who's pushing this on their professional development day, they can follow Billboard Chris on social media and learn the truth.
Well, I got to say that I think also a job of parents is to validate, to make sure that that is the case. When you said the word or the term safe schools before, safe schools mean something very different here in Australia. About, boy, it would have been close to a decade and a half ago now, maybe not that long, but around that, safe schools started up as this massive program around Australia. And this is just by the by, but they were pushing, um, this gender line in this program. It was styled as an anti-bullying program, but really, it was a program to push the whole LGBT, particularly the T part of it, in schools. And I, my claim to fame, I was actually a former parliamentarian, and I led a campaign against that in Australia, and we got it stopped. We did get it stopped in terms of federal funding, but they just morphed it into something else, and the roadshow continued on. But they try and hide it, Chris. They try and hide it, say that it's not what it really is. It's anti-bullying. It's got nothing to do with transgenderism.
Always.
But you got to dig deep. You got to dig. You got to dig. Look through the curricula like you did, and you'll find it there. You will find it there.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing to this, if I may, George. So oftentimes this indoctrination is not coming from the teachers. Sex Education Week, where I'm from, and it's like this in many jurisdictions, oftentimes a separate company will be hired to bring in educators for Sex Education Week. Here in British Columbia, it's a company called Salima Noon. They'll receive thousands of dollars to come and indoctrinate your kids, and your child's teacher is not doing the teaching at all. You've got some trans-identified individual that is brought in for the week. You've got school assemblies going on for the kids from grades 4 to 7, where they have trans-identified people there. And they're sitting in the classroom talking about how some kids who might not be comfortable with their body, well, guess what? They can change their body. And they're talking about totally inappropriate, sexually explicit things that they should not be talking about to children at that age. As far as I'm concerned, it's your job, the parents. Really, it's probably the mom's job, especially with the girls, to talk to the girls about all these things. And we don't need some individual from the community,
woke consultant,
walks into the school and starts talking to your kids about anal sex, for example, which they're doing. And this will be oftentimes the very first time your child in grade 5 has heard that these things exist. And it's disgusting. And it pisses me off because it's taking away your child's innocence at a time when it's totally unnecessary.
The story that you're telling, Chris, replicated in South Australia, where outside group brought in to tell the kids about all those sorts of things, including bestiality. I mean, the mind boggles. But we're going to see so much more of this, particularly if the UN get their way. And I don't know how much you've delved into what they're doing, Chris, about redefining the rights of a child, but it shocked me to actually see it in black and white, that they are pushing for things like puberty blockers, so-called gender affirming care, which I said before I wasn't going to repeat, but now I have. It's mutilation and experimentation. This whole gender line, they want it now defined, or at least the definition of the rights of a child expanded or redefined to include this as a right. And to me, it's the antithesis of a right. Children have the right to be what? To be children, not to be guinea pigs, not to be lab rats, not to be, caught up in the latest woke fad. And that's why we at Citizen Go are heavily pushing this petition that we've got, taking it up to national leaders and the UN. You can go to it, savechildrights.org, savechildrights.org, and sign that. I think, as I said, we've got over 203,000 signatures, and we're looking for a hell of a lot more. So savechildrights.org. Chris, do you know much about this push, that this review that the UN's doing to broaden the rights of the child?
Yeah, I know a bit. So let me talk about that. And I also want to talk about how this ends up impacting us at a personal level, because some people say, well, the UN is the UN. They don't write our laws. Well, that's true. But let's talk about it. So there's a convention on the rights of the child. It's this document that the UN drew up. And there's a committee on the rights of the child which amends this document. And right now they're trying to amend this document so that children can get puberty blockers, cross-sex hormone surgeries, what they call gender-affirming care, which is really sex-denying harm. Okay? No such thing as gender. 2 sexes, 0 genders, infinite personalities. That's it.
Yep.
But they call it gender-affirming care. It's such a nice sounding word, and they get politicians to go along with it. It's sex-denying harm. The only thing it's affirming is self-hatred. It's affirming that a child was born wrong, telling them they need to change their bodies. It's the opposite of affirmation, which is telling them that you are beautiful just as you are. That's what we should be telling them. Instead, we're telling them you were wrong. We're going to alter your development with a chemical castration drug. It's a prostate cancer drug. That's what it was approved for medically. It's for uterine fibroids, endometriosis. I'm sure women watching this right now, some of them have had endometriosis. They can tell you their own stories about when they went on Lupron or whatever this drug is called where they're from. It's awful. There are preliminary studies that show it's lowering IQ in these kids. We know it causes bone demineralization, sleeplessness. It's stopping their development. Girls' breasts aren't going to grow. Their hips aren't going to get wider. Boys' genitalia doesn't grow. They're not going to get a deep voice and all the things that happen during puberty. And puberty is a window in time. 10, 11, 12 to 16, 17, 18. When that window is done in life, it's done. It's closed. These boys, when they become men, they're not going to go through puberty in their 20s. They're going to have a high voice forever. They're going to have a micro penis forever. If it doesn't get amputated, because they're doing that too. But anyway, the UN wants to make this a child's right. And furthermore, they want to take away parents' rights to object. They want children to be able to get this without parental consent. In addition to the gender madness, they want children to have access to contraception and abortion, again, without parental consent. Now, why do we care? They're the UN. They don't write our laws. True, but their recommendations and their policy resolutions filter down into medical bodies. They filter down into our own governments, especially leftist governments. And I'll give you one quick example. The UN has this thing called the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, DRIPA. Under this act that they drew up, if Indigenous people, I'm from British Columbia, you're from Australia, so we have lots of this Indigenous debate going on. Under this policy resolution, whatever you want to call it, if Indigenous people ever fished on my property or any property around here hundreds of years ago, it is therefore their property. That's basically what this law says. And what happened in British Columbia just a few months ago, because our British Columbian government adopted DRIPA, the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, what happened was every single Indigenous band in British Columbia, which basically encompasses all land in BC, they all have land claims saying this is all actually our land because our people lived here 300 years ago. And what happened in the city of Richmond, BC, just a couple months ago, this is where you land when you fly into Vancouver. It's a huge, very populated city. Every single house now, basically, in the city of Richmond, if you own your house, that's great. You're on the title. Guess who else is on the title? This Indigenous tribe. So now you have companies that can't even get mortgages because there's so much uncertainty from the banks, and you have developments that are stopping. And you have individuals who work their whole life to own this property, and now they don't even know if they own it. You have these Indigenous bands saying, well, it's not the end of the world. We'll give them a 99-year lease. This is crazy. But it all started at the UN. And it's the same with gender. When we call gender ideology a fad, that's true, but it's more than a fad, because bell bottoms and fashions are fads that come and go. This has billions of dollars behind it. It has every leftist government behind it. It has the UN and the WHO and the World Economic Forum, although they seem to be moderating a little bit. But it has all these intergovernmental bodies behind it and all these NGOs, which are funded by governments themselves, pushing billions of dollars. And they're putting it into the education system. And as long as it's in the education system, it will never die. So it's not really a fad. It's something that has inorganically been created and pushed by all of these governments. And the UN which is dominated by radicals on the left, are now pushing this as well. And they're trying to take away your right as a parent to parent your own child.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned about money, because it's one of the things that I would always say, follow the money to see why this is being pushed, why this is a cult. My understanding is that, with the numbers, the size of compound annual growth rate that is in the industry around sex reassignment, gender reassignment, if you want to call it that, it is going to be, right now they're actually suggesting it is over $3 billion, and it could be growing to somewhere between $5 and $7 billion within, say, the next 10 years, less than that, in fact, probably the next 6 or 7 years. So that's big bucks. That's big bucks. That's big bucks. It's influencing governments, big bucks. It's influencing the UN. I'm sure some of those big pharmaceutical and big medicine companies are, contributing to get the results that they want from organizations like the UN. And they're certainly getting them, which is why the people have to push back. Again, I'll just say that website so that you know, savechildrights.org. Go to that now if you haven't and sign the petition, because we need to stop this rot in its tracks. Chris, if I can just add to what you said before, as a former member of Parliament in Australia, I have seen exactly how, in cases like that UN drip that you talked about, it was the same in Australia. They were pushing that and trying to get that built into legislation in Australia, so we would have even worse problems than what we currently have now in terms of Indigenous relations in Australia. But it also infected all environmental law, and certainly it infected social policy. And this is also one of the areas that it would easily infect in Australia. And again, it doesn't have to actually be a hard bit of legislation that's tabled in your country. If your country simply signs up and adopts something, then the bureaucrats filter that out to all departments. So if suddenly the UN says that the rights of a child now include the right without parental permission to change your gender and to start taking puberty blockers, or start having this experimentation done to you and this mutilation done to you, then guess what health departments are going to be instructed right across the country? Don't be instructed, mum and dad are to be put over there. We are just talking to the kid who's obviously got some mental issues and confusion going on, or could have, and we're going to talk to them about mastectomies, about pumping themselves full of female hormones, or testosterone, or whatever it might be. That is just something that I as a father, I couldn't countenance, and that's why it's important that we sign that petition. Again, we'll get it up on the screen, savechildrights.org. Chris, I wanted to go back to you and your campaign and the work that you are doing. You've been fined and arrested. We talked about that earlier. I showed the photo of you in Australia there, just simply for holding up signs. And it hasn't just been in Australia, it's been right across the world. Have you, are you in trouble at the moment with any jurisdiction because of this? That's the first question I got.
So after that, in Australia, I was arrested properly in Belgium. So I went to the European Parliament in Brussels to speak in June, and then I was back there in December, just last month. But I went out on the street. I'd been meeting with some Swedish members of the European Parliament just an hour or two before, and I went out on the street at about 6 p.m. And we were getting really harassed. I was with Lois McClatchy-Miller, who at the time was the international spokesperson for the Alliance Defending Freedom International. They helped fund my case in Australia, by the way. But we called the police because we were getting so harassed. Brussels is unlike any city I've been to, actually. I received way more objections there. and they were pretty vile. One man threw a glass bottle at me. It landed right beside a 5-year-old child. And we had this little mob forming, and I had got tired of Lois getting harassed, who was with me. So we called the police. 14 police arrived, 4 police vans. They formed a circle around us to keep the mob out. And basically, they ended up ordering us, not basically, they did order us to take off our signs and leave, assessing that we were the problem. How dare I object to children having their puberty stopped? So, of course, I refused to take off my signs. You can go ahead and arrest me, and I'll happily fight this in court and win. So they arrested us. And at first, it sounded like it was just going to be an administrative fine. And then at the first police station, we were now told we were being charged criminally. And so then we were handcuffed, taken to another police station where the jail was, strip searched, thrown in cells. My signs, I'm told, have been destroyed. And after a few hours there, we were released without any charge, without any ticket, nothing. So our rights were certainly violated there. And we're now taking legal action against various Belgian authorities. And this hasn't been announced yet, but I might as well announce it now. I actually had a meeting with lawyers for an hour and a half earlier today. A criminal investigation has been started into their own people, I believe. So we'll see what comes of that. I would love them to actually criminally investigate me. I would love nothing more than to go to court on this issue. It'd be great. But they're investigating their own people. So that's good.
Well, it is good.
I'll be back there and I'll cause a scene again, I'm sure. Not that I'm causing the scene, but a scene will arise. I just stand there peacefully. For me, it's like fishing. I just stand there and I wait for people to come up to me. But if they're going to try to stop us having these conversations, we have to be able to fight back. So I'm thankful for all the work you guys are doing. I'm going to be at the UN in March in New York for basically the whole week, trying to see what I can get done there. But you guys are doing amazing work all across the world, and I'm extremely thankful for you and thankful that you're bringing this to our attention, because nobody in the world knows what the Committee on the Rights of the Child is, but it's one of these things that has this influence all the way downstream into all the governments across the world. So it's important that we click on that link and sign that petition.
Well, Chris, just before we wrap up, tell us a quick bit about the We Speak Truth Foundation.
Sure. So I figured I should start a nonprofit. I've been losing money this whole time, and it's actually getting very stressful. I'm still here. I'm not stopping, and I won't be stopping. But I started a nonprofit in the States. People can go to wespeaktruth.com and donate. If they're American, they'll get the tax deduction. Anyone can donate, or they can support me individually if they want. Billboardchris.com. But yeah, go to wespeaktruth.com or billboardchris.com. You can help me out there. And really, I just want you to learn about this and have these conversations, because we've talked about a fair bit here today. When you understand how the world really works, we're talking about a relative handful of activists at the top levels in the UN. I spoke at the UN. I spoke at the Human Rights Council in Geneva, and I got support there afterwards. Various reps from different countries came to me. I met with different countries' reps individually when I was there. I even met with the representative for the Pope. All these guys support me. But you get these activists at the UN pushing this. And other people, it's human nature. It's psychology. They don't want to speak up because then they're anti-LGBTQ. Oh no, those 5 letters, they paralyze people. Well, you men out there, stop being paralyzed. This isn't about being against gay people. If you look at kids who historically had gender dysphoria, and I don't like that term, but whatever, they're distressed about their sex. If you look at all these kids, a lot of them grew up to be gay. This is the most homophobic movement in the history of the world. In Iran, 10 years ago, the Iranian national women's soccer team had 8 men on it because they'll die if they're gay. They'll be killed in Iran. But because of the Ayatollah, the first one, issued this fatwa, this decree that it was okay to be trans, you have all these gay men transitioning to survive. We do this across the West and call it love. Okay, it's crazy. So just learn about these things and speak about them professionally. Don't sound like this crazy radical like some people do. Just speak about it professionally, because we have all the truth on our side. And have the positive message again, which is that children are beautiful just as they are. No drugs or scalpels needed. There's no right or wrong way to be a girl or a boy. Why are we telling children that there is? Everyone agrees this and gets behind it. And so I know we have the people on our side. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when 90% of the population is on our side, that's who's going to win. Truth is going to win. But we have these activists at the UN and these intergovernmental bodies and within our own governments as well, because ordinary people are just trying to make a living, whereas these activists get funded by other activist bodies to run, and you end up with a government that doesn't represent the people at all. And that's the case all across the West. So the people just need to find their voice. One way we can find our voice is through this petition. So please sign it. It's not just a petition. It's going to be heard. We're going to use it to make some noise, because these people, you know, they don't like the population coming against them. And a lot of the people working at the UN just want an excuse to speak up as well. So they need to know that there are people behind them, because they're not all rabid leftists pushing this. They represent every country in the world, and most countries in the world aren't in favor of this. So they just need to know that they have a little support behind them.
Well, that's a great way to end this great discussion. I want to reinforce what you've just said. This isn't about attacking people. It's about protecting kids. And I think that silence just allows these changes that are being made at the UN and will be forced top down onto countries. It'll allow them to be moved forward without a challenge whatsoever. So sign the petition. It's up on the screen, savechildrights.org, to show that there is resistance, that there is public opposition. I can tell you that petitions like this do pressure decision makers. It exposes public disagreement that otherwise they think isn't there. If they don't hear from you, they don't know. So share that petition as well as signing it. You share it, it multiplies its impact right across countries. We're protecting kids, which should be the task of everyone, particularly parents, requires your active participation, not just your awareness, not just your griping at the dinner table as much as I do it along with the next person. It requires doing something, and just going to that website and putting your details in, clicking a button will ensure that you are doing something. So please sign the petition now. Chris, I want to thank you profusely on behalf of parents worldwide, behalf of fathers in particular, for the work that you are doing. You are putting your neck on the line day after day after day with a simple message that's all about protecting kids. And you, sir, should be applauded. I hope that there's a special medal somewhere that someone's crafting for you for the work you're doing. You do, mate, because there are not too many people that are brave enough to tackle this cult, but you are out there and you're on the front line. So well done, Billboard Chris. Thank you very much for joining us for this Citizen Go live stream.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for all you're doing. We are going to win. Just keep going.
Indeed we are. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen. Signing off, George Christensen and Billboard Chris, over and out.